Joe Rogan says that Biden is a dead man, but not like a threat. He was actually asked about Donald Trump. Speaking on the Lex Fridman podcast just the other day, Joe Rogan was asked about whether he thought Donald Trump would run for the presidency in 2024, and if he did, would he win? Joe Rogan said, well, he's running against a dead man. So not in a threatening way. He's saying Joe Biden is not all with it. His brain don't work. He's not functioning. How could he possibly win? And I agree. I think Joe Rogan is correct. Joe Biden is going to get absolutely crushed by Donald Trump. And here's the big news. Donald Trump is apparently set to announce he is running for the presidency again early. I wonder why, but I thought something like this would happen, that Donald Trump would get out in front of the presidential primaries for the Democrats, try and put the Democrats in a tough position, because Trump is going to come out. He's already been rallying. He's going to say, look at what it was like under me. Look where you are now. Biden is to blame. And I think Trump wants to do it before anything really bad happens to Joe Biden, because Rogan is correct. Well, when he's talking about Biden not being functioning, he's correct. Maybe Biden won't make it to the end of his term. I think he will. Maybe he won't be able to campaign again for re-election. So Donald Trump wants to exploit that. Think about it. Donald Trump comes out and says, I'm going to be running for the presidency 2024. You know it. I'll be running against Joe Biden. And then what happens when Joe Biden says, I can't do it? He's going to say, see, the Democrats are weak. You must vote for me. It would be very, very good for Donald Trump. So the question is, though, why hasn't Donald Trump appeared on Joe Rogan's show? Well, Joe Rogan pointed out. He's saying, I don't want to help him. Rogan doesn't want to help Donald Trump win the presidency. He's not a big fan, but that doesn't stop the left from saying Joe Rogan is right wing. No, I think Rogan is the barometer for regular Americans. And him pointing out that Joe Biden is not all with it is not profound. Joe Biden's aggregate approval rating is in the gutter. It is abysmal, lower than some of Trump's lowest ratings. Not the lowest, but very low. Donald Trump, things were going pretty well under him economically. But Joe Rogan did say something else. He said that Ron DeSantis would be a good president. If you take a look at what was going on in Florida, how DeSantis handled it, he did a pretty good job. And again, Rogan is correct. Ron DeSantis balanced freedom with security, not perfectly, but he got Florida back open. He looked at the science and said, we're backing off. Now you got people like Gavin Newsom saying, you don't want to be like Florida, be like us where we believe in freedom. And they arrested a guy who was like paddle boarding by himself in the ocean. No, California certainly doesn't believe in freedom. But whether or not Donald Trump will be able to run is another question, because it's starting to look like criminal charges may be filed against Trump. There's some subpoenas being filed against Trump's inner circle. Many are speculating that Trump will be indicted. So perhaps this is the real reason Donald Trump is going to be announcing early. Now, we don't know for sure, but things are certainly getting spicy either way. If they actually levy criminal charges against Trump to stop him from running, I mean, half this country is going to lose their minds. The other half is already losing their minds. We've got crazy, let's just say, acts of terror happening over this past weekend, plus all those pregnancy centers being firebombed. We are in for a wild next couple of years. One of the more interesting things I find about Joe Rogan's interview with Lex Fridman was how he points out that this is a very weird time, that the Trump era was a very weird time, as if to say it is leaving us behind. But I'll say this, Joe, you're right about so much. Absolutely. But there's a sense of finality in your in how you express your ideas, as if to say the Trump era is coming to a close. No, I don't think it's coming to a close. I don't think times are weird. I think they're escalating. I think it's getting crazier. And I wish I could say I was wrong. But you take a look at what's going on with Roe v. Wade, the protests, the anger. Look, I've got a video out of Minneapolis where people are driving around in cars firing fireworks at random people. I mean, it is breaking down. In Philadelphia the other day, people running and screaming. You know what happened in Highland Park? I don't think the Trump era was weird. I think the Trump era was a symptom of the breakdown, and the breakdown is going to keep happening. And it will only get weirder, and it will only get scarier. But let's read the story and see exactly what's going on, and we'll talk about Trump and Biden and these criminal charges. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and click that sign up button in the top right to support our work. You will get access to the exclusive Timcast IRL After Hours show Monday through Thursday. at 8 p.m. Tales from the Inverted Worlds, behind the scenes conversations about weird mysteries. The new season's out now, so we got a ton of new shows coming soon, and you'll be supporting our journalists. We got a lot happening in the background. We're going to be launching a ton of shows, members-only shows at timcast.com, basically creating our own streaming video-on-demand service. So a lot is coming, and if you support the work we do and you believe in challenging culture and building something new, please go to timcast.com, become a member, but don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Let's first see what Joe Rogan had to say. We got this from the Daily Wire. Quote, "I don't want to help him. Joe Rogan says he shot down the chance to interview Trump more than once." Now, the interesting thing is here. What's going on with Joe Biden? Popular podcast host Joe Rogan said Monday that he'd shot down several opportunities to interview former President Trump, saying, "I don't want to help him." Discussing politics, Rogan said, "The Trump era is going to be one of the weirder times. When people look back historically about the division in this country, he's such a polarizing figure that so many people felt like they could abandon their own ethics and morals and principles just to attack him. And anybody who supports him because he's an existential threat to democracy itself." Fridman asked whether Rogan believed Trump had caused the division or that he was more like a symptom of the division that had already been present beneath the surface. Quote, "You said it got real weird. Maybe it's going to get weirder," Fridman said. At which point Rogan posited that Trump was likely to run for president again in 2024. Quote, "Well, he's running against a dead man, you know? I mean, Biden shakes hands with people that aren't even there when he gets off stage. I think he's seeing ghosts. You see him on Jimmy Kimmel the other day? He was just rambling. I mean, if anyone else, if he was a Republican, if that was Donald Trump doing that, every effing talk show would be screaming for him to be off the air." Rogan then pivoted to make it clear that he was not a fan of Trump's. By the way, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him. I'm not interested in helping him. Fridman pushed back, saying that he believed Trump would eventually make his way to the Joe Rogan experience someday because Rogan would not be able to resist. I mean, saying, quote, "I mean, you've had a lot of people that I think you may otherwise be skeptical. Would I have a good conversation, which I think is your metric? You don't care about politics, and I think you had like Kanye on, for example, and you had a great conversation with them," Fridman argued. "Yeah, but Kanye's an artist. Kanye doing well or not doing well doesn't change the course of our country." Well, that leads me to a question about Joe Rogan's involvement. That is an overtly political statement and an outright injection into politics. I'm sorry, Joe. There's no way around it. For one, I always feel weird about doing segments talking about Joe Rogan's opinions because he's like a comedian with opinions. But considering he has the most influential podcast in the world, we can't ignore it. He's like the modern Larry King or Walter Cronkite or whatever you want to call it. And so his opinion really on these matters really does matter. Now, when Joe says he won't interview Donald Trump because he doesn't want to help him, he's basically saying he's involved. He knows that the people he interview benefit from his shows. It's a fact. I mean, I'm not acting like Joe's denying it or anything. I mean, he knows and doesn't want to help Trump. I don't look at it that way. We've had people talk to us about having Donald Trump on Timcast IRL, and I say, absolutely, I'd love to. I'd also love to have Joe Biden. That'd be a fantastic show. But we can't get many of those people, let alone Trump. It's hard to get Trump. I don't view having Trump on the show as helping Trump. I don't view having Carrie Lake on the show as helping Carrie Lake or Jen Perlman as helping Jen Perlman. She's a progressive out of Florida. I view it as I want to talk to whoever I want to talk to. That's it. Now, the reality is many on the left won't talk. They won't. They'll make up excuses or, there are some grifters who will be like, I should be allowed on your show. And we'll have as many on as we can. I want to have a real conversation with someone, not some stupid tribal pissing contest. So Joe saying he won't interview Donald Trump. Okay, fine. We know Joe is massively influential, but he is right about Joe Biden. How could Joe Biden actually run? Well, here's the big news. From CBS, Trump told allies he's considering announcing 2024 presidential bid early, sources say. Former President Trump has privately told his allies and aides in recent days that he is seriously considering announcing a 2024 presidential run early as this summer. Yes. Smart move, Trump, do it. You need to do it now. We'll explain why in a second, but it has a lot to do with these BS indictments and the things they're going after him with. But here we go. Trump's latest exploration of a political comeback and a potential summer announcement of another presidential campaign was first reported by the New York Times. Even as Trump moves closer to a 2024 run, his deliberations remain fluid. No final decision has been made on whether to run, and if so, when to launch such a bid, according to three people close to Trump who requested anonymity in order to share details on private conversations. Spokespeople for Trump did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Sunday. Now, I want to make a point and give you my honest opinion on Joe Rogan. I consider Joe Rogan a friend. He's said the same of me. I don't really talk all that often, but periodically, and I've been on his show several times, so I really do appreciate it. It's thanks to Joe that I got a big boost in my viewership, and many of you probably found me through Joe. So I'll say this. I think Joe is much more concerned about political pressures than I am. I think that Joe is a little bit behind where I'm at on political analyses. That is not to say in any way disrespectful. That is not to say that he's doing anything wrong. And it's not to say in any way that I'm doing anything better. I'm a politico, right? I'm in the political world. I'm reading this news front and center all day, every day. Joe Rogan's a comedian. He talks about spaceships and mushrooms and DMT, smokes pot with his friends. It's very different. For that reason, you'll likely see on my shows us addressing issues that ultimately wind up on the Rogan Experience maybe a few weeks later. And for this, I think, Rogan is a bit behind where the politicos are. And again, not a statement of disrespect, a statement of fact that it's not Joe's wheelhouse to be talking about all these things. But that is to say that I do think Joe will eventually find his way closer to where we are, probably will interview Donald Trump, and might even consider voting for him begrudgingly. Joe Rogan is a sensible guy. He's a smart guy. And I think if it came down to Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, Rogan would probably vote for Donald Trump, not liking him. And I understand and respect that. I say it all the time. You don't have to like Donald Trump to vote for him. You just have to think he's going to do a little bit better. It's going to be a bit better than Joe Biden. Now, that being said, you see where Rogan's at with Ron DeSantis? That I agree with. I got to say, every single day, I really do believe Ron DeSantis would be the better choice, save one issue. One. I don't believe Ron DeSantis will get in and drain the swamp. I don't believe that Trump would do it as effectively as I wish he would, but I think Donald Trump's going to go in and be like, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, and he's going to fire all these bureaucrats who need to be fired. I think Ron DeSantis would be a much, much better leader, and that's important. Rogan may find himself as being a new era Republican of sorts, because if Ron DeSantis is running, if Trump doesn't run, or if Trump loses, or for whatever reason it's DeSantis, Rogan's going to vote for DeSantis over Biden. I mean, just look at what he's saying. He's saying Donald Trump's running against a dead man. He'd probably vote for Donald Trump at this point as well. That's a barometer for regular people. Now, the Democrats who don't want to hear it are going to complain. They're posting on Reddit being like, Joe's been pulled to the far right by bad actors. Spare me, dude. It ain't going to fly. I go out there, I talk to regular people. I read the news. I may be ahead of the market, but you know what? Regular people, they agree more with me. And I can tell you, when you look at, I posted this thing on Instagram of sentiment towards flags. The American flag is overwhelmingly supported by everyone, the most popular. And then you take a look at some of these woke flags and they're very divisive. That whole woke stuff doesn't fly for most people in this country. Now, they're going to say that several people who have spoken to Trump recently tell CBS News that Trump and his small group of advisors are now mapping out various ways for Trump to announce a 2024 campaign, be it this summer or after the year's midterm elections. I think it'll be this summer. I think Trump wants to get in front of Joe Biden bowing out. Biden's approval rating is lower than where Donald Trump's approval rating was after January 6th. It is bad. If Trump knows, and his campaign knows, and his people behind the scenes know that Joe Biden is not going to make it to 2024 for the presidential election, they need to announce now. Think about it. Donald Trump comes out and says, I look forward to debating Joe Biden in a rematch. And they'll all cheer. And then what happens one day when Joe Biden goes, I can't run. I'm too old. Donald Trump's going to be like, your leaders are too scared. Joe Biden is bowing out. Two things could happen. Well, I mean, a bunch of things can happen, but there's two big things I see having an impact. One, if Donald Trump announces now, Joe Biden may be pressured into not bowing out and being like, okay, I'm going to run. He won't win this time. He won the first time because people really thought anything would be better than Trump. And now most people are shocked by inflation and they will take anything else. If Trump announces now he could lock Joe Biden in, as Rogan says, a dead man, and then Donald Trump wins. Or think about the alternative. Joe Biden bows out and says, I can't do it. Donald Trump says, wow, I was going to defeat Joe Biden so handily that he's quitting. And that will shatter the Democratic Party. Donald Trump needs to announce now. Joe Rogan praising Ron DeSantis. But we'll see. I'm not convinced. It may be a Trump DeSantis ticket. That would be tremendous. Talk about a massive victory. But will Donald Trump even be able to run? Here's the thing that could potentially hold him back. Donald Trump needs to announce now for another reason. From Newsweek, January 6th panel building multi-prong criminal case against Trump experts. Really? The House Select Committee has been successful in putting together a strong case that Donald Trump should face criminal charges. No, they haven't. That's an opinion. Okay, so let me just point this out. From Newsweek, Ewan Palmer, with an opinion. Whether or not this is a strong case is an opinion. I love how the media does that. They're going to say, while speaking under oath, Hutchinson said Trump was aware his supporters were armed, which is just the most insane thing I have ever heard. This idea that a bunch of armed people went to D.C. carrying illegal weapons that the law enforcement knew about, that the Democratic mayor knew about, no one got arrested, and all of those people who were armed just for some reason didn't go to the Capitol. Nonsense. But I digress. They're going to say, speaking to the Hill, Michael Bromwich, a former DOJ inspector general, said that what has been emerging during the Select Committee's hearings has the makings of a powerful multi-pronged criminal case. This includes evidence that he was aware of the substantial risk posed by his armed supporters and his desire to further inflame them by personally traveling to the Capitol. Now, I'm not entirely convinced they go after Trump. Really. We had Robert Barnes on the show on IRL a couple weeks ago, and he said if they indict Trump, then you get a Ron DeSantis who wins handily. That's true. They can't beat Ron DeSantis. And we all really like Ron DeSantis. So he's going to get the votes. But if Donald Trump is forced out, then what? Then Ron DeSantis wins. If Donald Trump is running, the Democrats are going to try and muster up all of that Trump hate, and it could help them greatly. I don't think they can win. I could be wrong. But I think the economy and everything has just gotten so bad under Biden that people will scream and beg for Donald Trump. Catherine Ross, a constitutional law professor at George Washington University Law School, said that Hutchinson's testimony about Trump saying, "They're not here to hurt me, it's all hearsay," was an astounding statement. That also goes to whether he can be indicted for incitement, because one of the things that the government would have to show to prosecute incitement is an understanding that violence was likely to follow imminently. Just how insane it is to believe any of this stuff. So no, I don't believe there will be an indictment against Donald Trump. We do have this, however. Fulton grand jury subpoenas Giuliani, Graham, Trump confidants. That's interesting. The grand jury also subpoenaed South Carolina U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Trump's top allies. The subpoenas were filed July 5th and signed off by Fulton Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney, who was overseeing the special grand jury. Unlike subpoenas issued to Georgians, the summons were required to receive McBurney's blessing. The 23-person special grand jury has heard testimony in recent weeks from a parade of witnesses, including some who had direct contact with Trump and his associates. But Tuesday's subpoenas are the closest jurors have gotten to the inner circle of the former president. We will see. A special grand jury investigating potential criminal interference in Georgia's 2020 elections and subpoenaed key members of Trump's legal team. We do not know if they are going to go after Trump or just cripple his inner circle. Here's what I think their best bet is and what Democrats may be planning for. You subpoena and indict Trump's confidants, weakening his campaign, forcing him to lose some of his key players. Allow him to run. Then you will have Trump hate Orange Man bad to run against, and you will weaken his chance of actually winning. I think that's a strong possibility. Salon writes, indictments are coming. At long last, criminal justice will catch up with Donald Trump. Why is it that when all the Q people come out and say, indictments, they're going to arrest Hillary Clinton, it's crackpot conspiracy. But when they keep screaming the same thing about Donald Trump, we're supposed to believe it. Well, the funny thing is, because one side has institutional power and one side doesn't. The crackpots who believe that Donald Trump did all this crazy stuff actually have seats in government. So there you go. The QAnon stuff is weak and it's crazy. I mean, the BlueAnon stuff is weak and crazy too, but they're actually going for it. So there you go. Here's another reason why Donald Trump needs to announce he's running for president now. In this story from September 2019, CNBC reported Trump asked Ukraine president in phone call if you can look into Biden and his son. And they said Donald Trump is trying to use criminal law to stop his opponents. At the time, Joe Biden was not running for president, nor was he expected to run for president. But they were saying Joe Biden was going to run for president. Therefore, Trump is trying to go up against his rivals. And I'm like, years in advance. It was like 2018, like 2 years in advance. Donald Trump knew it was going to be Biden. That's absurd. That was a lie. If Donald Trump announces now, it may not be worth all that much, but at least we can then say, and we already can really, they're just trying to stop Trump from running. They've written opinion pieces about it where they've said, a Washington Post op-ed, if it's really about stopping Trump, why not just vote to bar him from running? They just outright say that's what they're doing. Here we go. You're going to love this one from the Daily Wire. Haven't made a decision. Liz Cheney refuses to rule out 2024 presidential run. No way. If Liz Cheney actually runs for the Republican nomination, you're going to get me to go out and get all my friends and be like, we do not allow, like that. That's how you get Trump. This is how you get Trump. One of the most unpopular and loathed political individuals and families. And you want to, she's going to get a 0. I don't think anyone's going to vote for her. But let's see where things are going in this country outside of all this. State university faculty students to be surveyed on beliefs. Governor DeSantis suggested that budget cuts could be coming if universities and colleges are found to be indoctrinating students. This is getting weird. It's just getting weird, isn't it? Now, the left is screaming that they're doing a litmus test and political inquiries, and it's wrong and it's threatening, and the Republicans are staging a coup and it's a purge. I don't know, but it is getting crazy. I don't know where this leads, but it is getting crazy. Now, surveying people on their beliefs to better understand who believes what is different from labeling people on their political beliefs. But the left is arguing that it's kind of like an inquiry or an inquisition of sorts. Who believes what? Perhaps that's where we're going. Take a look at this from r/Dallas on Reddit. It is an image. It says Roe v. Wade protests day 2. Here are several individuals wearing full masks, goggles, and they are carrying weapons. Now, I can't tell. This looks like a shotgun of sorts. I'm not entirely sure. This guy appears to be carrying it's an AR-15 style rifle of some sort. Not sure what they're chambered in. Probably 5.56. This one right here, it looks, I don't think it's a shotgun. I don't know. I'm sure you guys watching who know more about guns can probably tell me. The point is, you got a handful of people walking, and they're armed. The next image we have. A woman dressed as a handmaid from The Handmaid's Tale saying this is how it starts. Under his eye, in a picture of Texas. We then have an image of more people in full tactical gear with masks that appear to be doing the red salute, which is the raising the fist fingers forward. You'll hear from the left, they say, it's a symbol of defiance and resistance. It's literally called the red salute. The raised fist is not just, power to the people. Technically it is, but they're manipulating you. The Roman salute, that's what the Nazis call it. It's just a Roman salute. We know what it means. Don't try me. What they're doing at the red salute, I'm not going to play the same game. I know exactly what they're doing. It is the communist salute. And many people are too stupid to realize that raising the fist is akin to raising the Roman salute, just for the opposing authoritarian ideology. But they've brainwashed people into thinking it just means challenge the system or power to the people or black power or whatever. Yeah, spare me. We know what you're doing. Now, look, I'm all about people having the right to keep and bear arms. So I got no issue with the people keeping and bearing arms. We got more people holding up signs. Here's one that's funny. This woman says, if you were really pro-life, 21,772 people wouldn't have died from gun violence in 2022. It's probably incorrect because she's probably including suicides in there. But I just love how, does she not realize there are people armed at this event? There are pro-gun people, and they make excuses saying, I'm only using the weapons here because I know what the rules are, and we need them to protect ourselves until they change the laws. Oh, shut up. The fact is, armed people are coming out, Armed people are wearing masks and armed people are shooting. Now, they'll come out and say, oh, this guy in Highland Park, yeah, well, he was dressed like a woman. His ideology was vague and hard to understand. I saw him wearing a Trump flag, though. Yeah, sure, he's got a rose tattoo as well. It's less descript, but is that socialism? He said he was a liberal. Ooh, does that mean he's a Trump supporter? I don't know. We don't know exactly. But he was seen in an event with a bunch of Trump supporters. Yeah, and there were counter-protesters there, too. Was he a counter-protester? You don't know. We don't. The fact is, both sides will claim the individual is their enemy. He represents the other side. And that's where things are getting chaotic. Take a look at this from the Post-Millennial. Portland protesters launch mortars at federal buildings, smash windows, and burn American flags. What's been happening in Portland has been serious low-tier terror. I say low-tier because they're not trying to kill you. They're trying to terrify you, destroy your business, and make it impossible for you to live. But they know that if they take a life, that's when things get really bad in the press. When Andy Ngo was brutally beaten in the street, it forced all of the news media to talk about it. Everybody was asking, what happened to that guy? A gay Asian immigrant was brutally beaten by Antifa. There are fringe crazy right-wingers, but there are many fringe crazy left-wingers. And the thing is, the left has institutional power. The right has relatively little. So I think we're heading in a dangerous direction. You know, I have to talk about civil war. We have this story from the Columbia Dispatch. In today's political division, civil war historians see cause for concern. Don't take it from me. I'm just a guy reading stuff on the internet. They write. They say, maybe you've wondered as I have. Is this the beginning of the end? Are we headed for another civil war, or is it hyperbole? I thought I'd pose the question to some Civil War historians. Their responses were measured and thought-provoking. They weren't exactly comforting. Ohio State University professor Joan E. Cashin specializes in social, economic, and cultural history. Ohio University professor Brian Schoen focuses his research and teaching on the political, social, economic, and intellectual history of the early U.S. from its early struggles through its near dissolution in the Civil War. So where do we stand? Maybe not on the brink of a civil war as most Americans think of one, but they do see the warning signs. For Cashin, a tipping point came with the 2020 election. Before November 2020, I would not have considered these comparisons appropriate. Americans have always had deep political conflicts. They have argued passionately over domestic policy and foreign policy. They have articulated profoundly different visions of the direction of the nation should take. But until the election of November 2020, they usually accepted the basic legitimacy of the country's institutions, Cashin said. The great exception was 1860, when many voters who opposed Abraham Lincoln left the Union rather than accept his presidency. But they did not dispute the fact that he won the election. That changed in 2020, when the defeated candidate Donald Trump refused to accept the election's outcome, and then the chaos at the Capitol. That, too, is unprecedented. We unquestionably are living through a particularly tumultuous moment in U.S. history. There have been others, such as widespread unrest and conflict that came during the civil rights and Vietnam eras, all of which coincided ironically with the centennial of the Civil War. This isn't the first time people have made these comparisons. They're going to mention a bit about the 1960s, et cetera, et cetera. They go on to say, today only a few of the largest states might have the economic wherewithal to attempt to let it go, to go it alone. But there has been little rhetoric to that effect among politicians in those states. There are some, quote, there are some striking differences to where the country is now and where it was in 1860. What we don't want to see is continued loss in faith of the institutions around which our government has stood. After January 6th, Cashin said she became very concerned. I hope and pray that no one starts seizing federal property as the secessionists did at Fort Sumter. But I am apprehensive about what the future holds. The interesting thing, in my opinion, is that we are seeing now in New Hampshire, I believe it is, in Missouri, the semi-nullification of federal law. The state saying we will not aid federal government in enforcement of gun laws. The federal government doesn't have the ability to enforce the law without local law enforcement helping them. So what? The federal government being weakened and the states ignoring it, the breakdown happens. Now with Roe v. Wade going to the states, what happens if the Republicans win in November and try and pass a nationwide abortion ban? I think they will. They say they won't. I think they will. It is popular among Republicans. You see, the Republicans, in my opinion, are saying, we just want it to be a states' right issue. The states can decide for themselves. Then they won on that ground. And the Supreme Court said, yep, that's the way it should be. It should go to Congress. Now the Republicans are going to say, well, the Supreme Court said it is incumbent upon Congress to pass these laws, and we think it should be banned. And then it will go to blue states, and the blue states will say no. And the federal government will lose what little confidence it had left. De Tocqueville also stressed that people must find common causes or a shared sense of purpose outside of politics. We need to find ways to talk about our country's past and that confronts directly some of its problematic parts, while also celebrating many of our country's better moments. That is not happening among the left, and there's no conversation around it. They were criticizing July 4th. They want to celebrate Juneteenth. It is a different culture. Our culture has imploded. Which brings me to this video, which I can't really show because YouTube would freak out. But in it, you can see a vehicle driving down the street, firing fireworks at people randomly. And you can see in this 1.5-minute video, it's just chaotic. Throughout Minneapolis, people are just driving around firing fireworks at people. Yo, that's not civil war. That is just the breakdown. It is the collapse. This is where things get scary because it doesn't have to be a bunch of Proud Boys marching down the street and a bunch of Antifa going charge, but people in cities saying we have no confidence in law enforcement. We have no confidence in government. What federal government? When they can drive around firing at people with impunity. When people at pride marches can romp about naked and twerk in front of little girls, our culture is shattered. You wonder why there's mass shootings? Because they don't care about you. Because these people, these young men want attention and they don't care about you. There is nothing holding our culture together. And so it will break apart. But it has. The left and the right will never see eye to eye. I guess on Epstein they do. That's about it. And then you will see disparate factions fighting. These people in these cars, they're not right-wingers. The gangbangers in Chicago, they're not right-wingers. They're not left-wingers. They're going to say, we don't know, we don't care, we want stuff. When the system breaks down, it won't be right versus left. It will be faction versus faction. And remnants of the government fighting amongst them, like in Syria. So we shall see. Now let's tone it back a little bit. Maybe Rogan's got a point that these are just weird times. Maybe we'll get through them. But we'll see, I guess. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.